Welcome to another episode of One on One with Mitch Lafon. Joining me this week from the Winery Dogs, guitarist Richie Kotzen, and from Australian extreme metal band King Parrot, singer Matt Young. I've got a co-host this week. We haven't had one in a while. Good old Mark Strigl from Talking Metal. Good day, sir.
Hey, Mitch. Glad to be back with you here on One with Mitch Lafon. And very cool. Richie Kotzen. Love the Winery Dogs. One of my favorite records of 2014 was that first Winery Dogs record. Just incredible stuff. I'm so glad they're back with a new release.
Yeah, and that's why I had to have you on, because I know you're a big fan of the band, and I know you'd be enthused to talk about Richie and stuff. Now, have you heard the new album Hot Streak?
Yeah, I just started listening to it, and I'm still, I'm not. I always need definitely two or three listens to a record before I pass judgment on it. But yeah, digging it a lot so far, and I'm about one listen through it at this point. I actually went in. This annoys me. I went into Best Buy here in New Jersey, and wanted to buy the CD copy of it. And this is yesterday, Saturday. It came out, I believe, on Friday, and not on the shelf there. Nothing. It's amazing how the music business is just so behind the curve. I mean, how many people walked in? Probably not a lot, but just if it should have been on the shelf there, ready for me to
To pick up.
purchase.
Yeah, I've given up on walking into any store to try to buy. I automatically go to Amazon and just hit, buy now, and I just wait an extra couple of days. That seems to be the only way to know and to get what you want. Now, the other interesting thing about October 2nd and the release of the Winery Dogs is that Richie solo released a new live DVD as well. So there's a Richie Kotzen live DVD that came out on Friday. So he's got
Cool.
two things on the market right now. The album sounds great to me. It's they've moved from being a project to being a band, and you can really hear that on this album. The other interesting thing that we talked about on in this interview is how he and Billy were actually in a band together with Pat Torpey way before Mr. Big, way
Wow.
before the Winery Dogs, and they had been doing this trio thing. They even recorded some songs, and of course, nothing came of it. Billy and of course Richie went on to play in Mr. Big. Well, of course, Pat as well. And eventually the Winery Dogs came to be, but it took about 20 years for Billy and Richie's relationship to blossom into an actual project and an actual band. So you get to hear Richie talk about that. Shall we get to it,
Cool.
Mark?
Yeah, let's check it out.
Here is Richie Kotzen. We are speaking with Richie Kotzen. The new album by the Winery Dogs is Hot Streak. Good day, Richie. How are you?
I'm great. How you?
Good, good. So I've had a chance to listen to Hot Streak, and it is just fantastic. You must be very, very proud of this album.
Well, I think we outdid ourselves this time on this record. I really liked the first record, and it resonated with people and kept us on the road for quite a while. We did over 100 shows, and this time around, we went in with the same attitude. We didn't have any expectations, and just got in a room and jammed and came up with some ideas, and I took those ideas and wrote some lyrics and melodies and ended up with what we've got now. But somehow I like this record more. I'm more excited about the material on this album than the previous one, so I think that's a good sign.
Yeah, it really is. The first album to me seemed more like just a project that you guys were doing. This time it seems more like a band. Do you sense that as well?
Well, there's an interesting thing. It's funny that you say that. On the first record, there was a similar writing formula that we used on this record, where we got in a room, we jammed some ideas. I lived with the ideas for a while and wrote some lyrics and melodies and turned them into songs. So that it was consistent on both records. But on the first record, there were a handful of compositions that I had previously written that we adopted and turned those into Winery Dog songs. So songs like I'm No Angel, Regret, Damaged, and a few others were written prior to the band even forming. And so you had this kind of a hybrid approach to putting the record together. I don't think that's noticeable. I don't think anyone would realize that unless I told them. But on this record, on Hot Streak, I didn't bring anything in. This was really a situation where we got in a room and every single thing on the record started from us jamming in the room, and then I took them and developed the ideas into songs. And also, I think there was a familiar feeling that we had working together, having done 100 shows, having already made a record that resonated with people and did very well. You know, we knew each other a lot better, so I think those things kind of add up, and maybe that's why I think this record is even stronger than the first one. I mean, maybe it's not. Maybe, you know, that's the other thing you have to realize. Any recording artist, if things are working the way they're supposed to work, you're most excited about your most recent work. So, you know, it's supposed to be like that. I mean, you don't hear someone make a record and say, hey, check out my new record. It's not really that great, and it's not nearly as good as the previous record, right, but check it out anyway. I mean, no one says that. You know, everyone says, oh, it's my new record. It's even better than the last one. But I really believe it this time, so we'll see what happens. You know, the record's been out a couple of days. Let's see what the people who are listening to it think.
Yeah, and I agree with that. You know, being a Kiss fan, I've heard that for the last 40 years. This one is better than the last one. This one's better than the last one. A lot has been made about how the band got together. A lot of credit goes to Eddie Trunk, who, by the way, I respect immensely. But I have to ask you, you were in a band with Billy before. You obviously, back in 2000 and maybe a little before, did some shows with Mr. Big and Billy. Had you at that time discussed the possibility of getting together in a band?
No, but I'll tell you something that nobody knows. Years prior to that, several years prior to that, Billy and Pat Torpey and I were getting together and trying to write and talking about maybe forming a trio. And we actually did record one song together for a record. There's a song called Locked Out that is on a record of mine called What Is that was released in 1998. And that song was something that we had worked on together musically, and very much like the Winery Dogs, I took the ideas and turned it into a song, and it ended up on my record, and they played on it. So Pat and Billy and I had actually been working together years prior to me joining Mr. Big, and then it just so happened that I was invited to join the band. At that time, I was really busy. I had 2 solo records out. I was in the band already with Stanley Clarke, and my initial reaction was, you know, I love Mr. Big, but I don't see how I could possibly do it. I don't see how I could have the time. And back then, Mr. Big was relatively inactive outside of Japan. So the reality was we would spend a month writing a record and recording, and then another couple of weeks touring Japan, and that was it. So I ended up doing it. It was a lot of fun. We wrote some really cool songs, and you know, I love Billy. I've known him since I was 20 years old, so you know, he not only is a bandmate, but he's a longtime friend. So right, working with him is really easy.
Right, so you've had that long sort of relationship with him. Speaking of your solo albums, I'd like to go back to the first one that came out in '89, which is just simply called Richie Kotzen. On that, you had Mike Varney, who, of course, of Shrapnel Records, helped put the album together. Very well respected. What did Mike Varney do for you in your career?
Everything. I mean, you know, if it wasn't for him, I mean, you know, it could have been someone else. I could have met someone else, another executive down the line, gotten a record deal, and taken a completely different route. So that could have happened. But if you look at what did happen, if it wasn't for Mike, everything else would have been very, very different. So you have to realize that first record, those are compositions that I wrote as a 17-year-old kid, trying to get out of a small town in Pennsylvania. So back then, It was very popular to make instrumental guitar records. It was a way to get noticed. My first focus was to try and get a Guitar Player magazine, which I did. He wrote me up in his column Spotlight, and that led to him signing me to his record label. And I made a record that was really focused on some pretty crazy guitar playing. But immediately after that, I realized, I am not an instrumentalist. This is not really something I'm passionate about. Now that I've noticed what I really want to do with my music, and I realized that I wanted to do music that involves singing and songs, and so on my second record, I sang, and from there I sort of found myself as an artist, and now here I am at 45,
Right,
and evolved into something quite different than what I was on that very first record. But as far as Mike Varney, it was him who told me to sing on that second record. I was auditioning singers. He didn't really resonate with any of the guys that I was sending him. And finally he said, I'd like to hear you try and sing your own songs. I think that'll be more effective. And so I did. I started listening to guys like Paul Rodgers and early Rod Stewart and tried to emulate those guys. Those were my first influences. And then R&B singers like Levi Stubb and obviously Stevie Wonder. And finally, when Terence Trent D'Arby came out, that was the guy that really just blew my mind as a singer. He, to me, had it all. He had the R&B sensibilities that I loved, but he also had the rock attitude and tone. And so that was the first guy that I really I took that record, introducing the Hardline, and tried to at least learn every single run and every single thing that he did on that record. And then from there, I evolved into what I do now. So those were the early stages.
yeah, and a nice trajectory, by the way. Now, I just want to ask you one other thing about the first album. It was produced by Jason Becker, and Jason is, I interviewed him about 3-4 months ago with the help of his dad, obviously. Fantastic person, incredible story. You have a special relationship with him. If you look up, online, there's you doing songs for him at his birthday. Just talk to me a little bit about Jason, because he is an incredible person. At least I certainly think so.
Yeah, and it was a great time when we met. He had already recorded 2 or 3 records for Shrapnel, so he kind of knew the protocol and how it worked. I had not done any records. I did an EP kind of a record with my band back in Pennsylvania, but I had never done the kind of record that I was to make for Shrapnel. And Mike Varney was tied up with some other projects, so he thought, why not team me up with Jason? We were 6 months apart in age. He's 6 months older than I am. And so he had the experience and the knowledge to walk me through the process and sort of guide me through the record-making process. And it was a lot of fun. We were roommates. We were up in Cotati, California, at the studio that was kind of like a farm. And we spent a lot of time together. And, it was like 2 crazy kids, pulling pranks on each other. And it was a great time. We maintained our friendship, and he's a very inspirational person, not only through his music, but just his general being and how he handles his circumstances. And he's just an amazing person.
Yeah, I fully agree. And, anyway, I want to move on to the Bill and Ted Bogus Journey soundtrack. You had Dream of a New Day, which is from your Fever Dream album, on there. How did you get on there? At that time, you were reasonably unknown. There was sort of 2 albums out, but you weren't playing arenas. How did you get on the Bill and Ted soundtrack, and how did that affect you in terms of your career?
Well, sure. At the time, my first record came out. Shortly after that, I was recognized in the Reader's Poll, the Best New Talent. I think it was that year. It was Nuno, me, and Stevie Salas were the top 3. Nuno was number 1, And so I had that recognition. And then shortly after that, Guitar World put Nuno and I and Red Beach on the cover. So I was getting quite a bit of press off of that first record. The second record, when it was finished, my label really thought it was a special record, and they started shopping my contracts. And so what happened was Interscope bought my contracts. And so that second record, Fever Dream, came out. As part of the buyout, I was required to give Shrapnel one more record. Well, I was in the mode of making vocal records at that point. Instrumental records were nothing that I wanted to be bothered with. But to get out of the deal with Shrapnel, I had to make a third record, which had to be instrumental, because if it was vocal, it would have competed with the Interscope record. So we did that. We released that third record. Interscope was doing the soundtrack for that movie. I was one of the first artists they signed, and so they thought it'd be a good introduction to release Dream of a New Day. I went back and re-sang it. I replaced the bass guitar. I was singing much better by then, so that version that's on that soundtrack is different than the version from the album. And unfortunately, the Interscope thing kind of fell apart. They signed me, they put me on the soundtrack, and I stayed for a year writing and recording songs. We ended up with Danny Korchmar was going to produce the record. We were going to write a few more songs together. He had just done Don Henley's record, End of the Innocence, which was my favorite record back then. And I was very excited to go in with Danny and make this record. It was going to be more of an R&B soul thing, because that's really who I was artistically. And I was super excited about it. And at the last minute, the label pulled the plug, and they said, well, we signed you to be a hard rock act, and we don't want you doing this kind of soul thing. And I got very upset, because I thought, well, this is really who I am. I mean, I got, the Shrapnel thing was a great thing to get me out of Birdsboro, Pennsylvania, but I'm not a metal guy. I have no interest in playing heavy metal. I really loved metal when I was 12 and 13, and I listened to Maiden and Black Sabbath, but I have a lot more to offer musically than that. And
right.
So I was frustrated. They pulled the plug, and I demanded to be released from the contract. It was a huge commotion. And in the end, they released me, and I went on to do other things. But the way I got on the soundtrack is because that was my record company at the time, and they were trying to introduce me to to a larger market.
Right.
Yeah,
Now,
exactly.
Now, another band on that soundtrack was Kiss. 2004, you recorded with Gene Simmons for his somewhat inappropriately titled "Asshole" album. How did you hook up with Gene, and what was it like? I mean, after all, it is Gene Simmons A Kiss, a band that you have openly said that you're a fan of. Or how was that experience for you?
It was really great. He's an amazing person. I had met him years before, and he's always been very supportive.
Absolutely.
And that day he came to the studio was kind of funny, because I had purchased a commercial building in North Hollywood, primarily as a real estate investment. But the idea was, if I can find a way for this building to pay for itself for a few years and renovate it, I could probably sell it and make some money. And so I decided to make it a recording studio. And so I ran it as a studio for about 3.5 years, and ended up selling it to the guys from Blink-182. But during that time, I had a bunch of great clients come through, and one of the first ones that came through was Gene Simmons. And it was kind of funny, because he showed up, he wanted to work on his record, and he comes in and he hands me this tape, like a cassette-looking tape. And I realized it's a format that nobody used. It was either an ADAT. It wasn't ADAT. It was just the other one, DA.
Oh, yeah, I know. It's a digital cassette or whatever they were called with a...
Right. And so I was like, oh, no. And I didn't have the machine. And
oops.
So we kind of scrambled, and we rented one, and my engineer was able to extract the audio files. And so he started working on the record. He did, I think he did the whole record there, or at least, the majority of it. And then, I wasn't that involved. I ended up playing on a couple things for him. I would come down and check in from time to time. It was pretty much him and my engineer. that worked on the record. But he's a great guy, and when the Winery Dogs formed, he said a lot of nice things about the band. Even tweeted some things, which was really nice. And so it was great. He's a great guy, and it's very cool to know that he's aware of what I do.
Yeah, absolutely. The last time we spoke, you were plugging the album Cannibals, your solo album, the latest one. What are the plans for you in terms of new solo material? Because since 1989, you've released one almost every 15 months kind of thing. Are you working on one now, or do you just sort of go with the Winery Dogs for the next couple of years and say, okay, we'll deal with the next solo album later?
Well, I'll tell you what I have now that is just been released that I'm really excited about is my live DVD.
Right.
It's called Richie Kotzen Live, and I had a really cool DVD come out years ago from Brazil that was very cool. But this DVD, it's the first time I had like really, really good cameras and really, really good audio, and it was recorded the right way. And it was also done at the end of my solo tour on one of the last shows. So by then the band really had it together. And DVDs are tricky because you might have a great visual or a great audio, but if the band isn't playing well, you got to throw it away. We got really lucky. We got great camera, great audio, and the band really played it as well as we possibly could. So I'm really excited about that. People that want to know what I do, when I'm out touring, this is a great thing to get and check out. As far as solo stuff, I've been a solo artist my whole life, and that's always been my priority. That's who I am. It's what I do. It's therapeutic. I can't imagine not doing that. I mean, the thing is that's really nice is that the Winery Dogs actually, it's not too far off from what I do on my solo records. It's not that different. If you listen to the new record and you go back and you listen to 24 Hours or Cannibals, those records I tend to go a little bit more in the R&B department because that's really where my roots are. But Winery Dogs isn't that much different. The beauty of it is I'm playing with two guys that are amazing musicians, and they're writing with me, so I'm getting a little bit of a different perspective. But, the timing works perfect. By the time this Winery Dog album cycle ends, I'll probably have a grip of really cool songs that I like, that I'm excited about, and I'll record them, and hopefully I'll release them and do some shows. And it's like a pendulum that swings back and forth. It's nice for me. I'll always do my solo thing. It's who I am. But the Winery Dogs, it's nice for me to have an opportunity to play with guys that are great players, right, that can offer some things that I might not think about on my own.
And be in a band. By the way, the live DVD also came out on October 2nd, same day as the Winery Dogs. I know we're running out of time. I'll ask you a couple more questions. Every interview I seem to read of yours, somebody is always asking you about Poison. Are you tired about talking about Poison?
No, and it's kind of baffling to me. I mean, like, why should that be a bad thing? I mean, Poison is a band that sold 20 million records.
Great band.
Extremely relevant in the 80s. You can still hear their songs on certain radio formats today because they're considered classics. I had the opportunity of joining that band when I was 20 years old. I was brought in as a member. I was a primary writer. We made an amazing record. I love the record we made. It feels like my record in a lot of degrees because they allowed me that much creative freedom, and it was a great time in my life. I don't know why it has to be an issue. They're great guys. I know my departure was controversial, but a lot of what was said in the press was sensationalized. It wasn't totally 100% accurate the way all that happened. I wouldn't change it. If I was back in the same situation, I would have handled it the same way. And, it's a long time ago. It's something I did. I was in the band for 3 years. We made a great record, and I had a lot of fun, and it was a great opportunity. I don't know why I should be bothered by it.
Right. And of course, in the last 3 or 4 years, they re-released a live, I think, at the Hammersmith album with you on it.
Yeah.
So, which
I was
is
really, really sick. I remember that show. I was really sick. I had a brutal ear infection, and we had to fly after that. And the doctor in England said I shouldn't get on the plane, but I felt like I had no choice. I think we were doing the Tonight Show in L.A., and I got to L.A. My ears were closed for 2.5 weeks, and I had to do some kind of crazy procedure to get whatever was blocking out, and it was pretty scary actually. But I remember that show and that video. I couldn't really hear it properly, and somehow I cut through it. But yeah, I guess they must have re-released it. I don't know if they changed anything. I only ever saw the original one.
I actually bought it, and I don't know if they changed anything from the one I had previous. I think they might have maybe added a song that they had left off or something. And then back to the Winery Dogs. The tour has just started. What is the cycle for you? Is this something you're committing 2 years to? Are you committing 9 months to? When do you think about a third album?
I don't know. I mean, I don't look at things that way. I never do. Even with making the record, they were trying to get a deadline out of me, and I mean, I remember telling my manager, "Hey, it'll be done when it's fucking done. When I have the songs, when the lyrics are ready, and when it's ready, it's ready." And this is the problem. Why a lot of bands get in trouble is they try to meet these deadlines, and suddenly the art, the creativity, everything is sacrificed, and you're rushing and you're stressing and you're scrambling, and you end up with a real piece of crap. And I just refuse to do that. I'd rather just lose whatever momentum and wait until we have something that's really worth sharing. And I think we do. It worked out. We got together in January. We jammed out some ideas. I spent a couple of months with them, developed them into songs. We got together again, recorded it, and from January, by July 15th, the record was mixed. And it all worked out. But if by that point we didn't have the goods, we would have put it on hold. So as far as touring, it really depends. That's kind of out of our hands. At the moment, we've got 5 weeks booked in the United States. The shows appear to be selling really, really well. Last night was sold out. It was our first show. I don't know what's going to happen tonight. But as we get offers, we go, we play. As long as there's a demand and there's people that want to see the band and it makes sense for us and, we can go out and survive, we're going to do it. And if it fizzles out, it fizzles out, and then we'll look at our other options. But, you don't know. I don't know. This could last. When we did the first record, I'll put it to you this way. I figured we would make a really cool record, go out to a couple of key market shows, Tokyo, New York, London, LA, whatever, and that would be it. And it turned out that we toured for over a year. So I didn't know. I had no way to predict that. At this point, we have to see what happens. As long as there's a demand, we'll go do it.
Yeah, and I was going to end on that, but you just mentioned that you take as long as you need to get it. How do you know when a song is done, or how do you know when this album is done? What's that moment?
I know, and it's really quite simple for me, and everybody's different. Some guys are analyzers, and for some people, it'll never be done because they'll always be questioning. That really comes from insecurity. For me, I know when it's done because I press play and I listen to the speakers, and I want to hear it again and again and again and again. And every time I listen, I'm excited, and I don't want to change anything because I just know it's perfect. And that's how I know it's done. And that happens, and it happens relatively quickly for me. A lot of times when I hear a piece of music, even in the Winery Dogs, take the song Hot Streak. It started from a bass lick that Billy played. And I said, that's great. I said, let's work on that. So we jammed the riff. I instantly heard a melody, and I started singing the riffing on the Hot Streak thing. I knew there was a song there. When they cut the basic tracks, I took it home. I put it in my studio. I started moving things around with the guitar parts, orchestrating some things, copying, doubling a lot of things Mike did on the drums. There was no bass on it at the time. I brought it back to the studio. Everybody loved it. We had a song. And I knew that once Billy put his bass on it, it was going to be slam dunk. So I hear things finished. I hear an idea. I know where it's going to go. Now, on the other hand, sometimes when I'm doing my stuff alone, ideas, I hear something, and as it's being recorded, it evolves. But in the end, when I hit play and it's coming out of the speakers and it's mirroring what I heard in my head, then I know it's done. And it's a pretty easy thing for me to determine when something's finished.
Okay, and what was I going to say? I've lost my train of thought. Always a pleasure to talk to you, Richie, and good luck with this album and this tour. It's been something spectacular to see how this band sort of came out of nowhere, and fans have just embraced them, and it's special. We don't see that anymore, so it's really unique.
Well, thank you, and thanks for the interview. And maybe I'll see you if I come to your town. Introduce yourself. So it'd be nice to meet in person.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm up in Montreal, and hopefully we'll get you here at some point. There's no Montreal dates yet. There's hope. We got to get you
Okay,
there.
we'll see. On the second leg, we're going to come up there.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure,
All right.
Richie. Thank you very much.
All right.
Have a
Bye,
good one.
Jeff.
Bye-bye. There you have it, folks. My interview with Richie Kotzen of the Winery Dogs. The new album is Hot Streak. Definitely recommended listening. And I know, Mark, you're going to enjoy it, right? You've only heard it once or twice, but that one's probably going to get played until Christmas, at least at your household.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. And I really I'm a big. I've kind of gone back to wanting the CDs. There was a number of years where I was just content with the MP3s and stuff, but now it's like I really want to hear these CDs. I love. I have a good CD player in my car. I love putting them in and listening to them while I'm driving. And this is an album that I definitely want to experience that way. And love these guys. Every one of them is just so near and dear to my heart with their musicianship and songwriting, and Billy and Mike and Richie. Just wow, what a super group, what a great team.
What a great team, yeah. And we should,
Yeah,
of course, mention that Mike has been filling in with Twisted Sister. And
that's right. Yeah, one of like 50 things that he's currently doing. It's just
right.
insane.
The guy's got musical ADD, I think. But hey, it's a benefit for fans. We get a lot of great projects coming from him. So there you go.
Right.
Let's move on to a band that recently came in to Montreal, a band named King Parrot. Their singer, Matt Young, gave me a call to talk about their new album, Dead Set. They are part of a tour that features Cattle Decapitation, a band that you and I sat down with at Heavy Montreal this year.
Yes.
Wow, there's a band for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, some extreme
Some
stuff. Yeah.
extreme metal. But the fun thing about King Parrot, and one of the reasons I put him on this show, is because we've got a winery dog, and now we've got a King Parrot, so we've got the animal kingdom covered tonight, which is great.
There you go.
There you go. But I just like the Australian way, and it was in fact some fans from Australia that contacted me and said, "We love this band. Can you give them some sunshine? Can you shine a light on them for an episode or something?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, why not? They sound great." And then Matt was exceptionally nice, and he emailed me and said, "Hey, would you mind? Could we?" And so I said, "Yeah, you know what? I'm always willing to help out a new band and a band that is working it and stuff like that." And Dead Set is a fun, if you can use that word, but a fun extreme metal kind of. Can you say
Yeah.
fun and extreme metal in the same sentence?
Oh
By the
yeah.
way,
I think so. And I mean, I think where we've gotten in the music business is that we all have to support one another, whether it's going out and buying the CDs, or trying to give somebody some press and get some ears on their music, and letting people hear their story. And even with what we do here, guys, we definitely could use your support. This is a commercial free podcast that we do for the love of it. We don't really make any money off of this at all, and if you want to donate, Mitch has a PayPal account. Go to PayPal. It's Mitch Minute at AOL.com is his PayPal account, and send over a donation, whatever you can afford. And if you can't afford anything, that's cool too. Just keep listening. Maybe go write a review on iTunes or something like that.
And thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, the podcast in itself is sort of a glorified hobby. It's when you get down to writing press releases and stuff like that, where the money comes in, or the coverage we did at certain festivals this summer. But the podcast itself really is an interesting hobby, but a
Yeah.
great one. And
And like you said, it does lead to other things, but
right.
it's a platform for us to talk to you guys, for Mitch to talk to you guys, and for Mitch to use his great interviewing skills. I mean, I can't believe Loudwire or one of these other platforms hasn't sucked you up. I mean, you're the man when it comes to interviewing these guys, and just your name's on Blabbermouth and Brave Words like at least once a week, sometimes 3 times a week. I see it up there. So keep
Yeah.
up the good work,
Well,
Mitch.
thank you. And the last few interviews with John Bush, for example, and Nick Menza, those ones sort of landed everywhere. I think it was Loudwire, Ultimate Classic Rock, Blabbermouth, Brave Words. I mean, those ones
Yeah.
went on fire, which was great.
John Bush one too, the Anthrax
Well, that's what
stuff.
I meant. Yeah,
Yeah.
the John Bush one. It went everywhere. So that was
Yeah.
great. But yeah, this stuff leads to other stuff. You know, I've written official bios for bands that nobody knows about. I've written pull quotes for bands and stuff like that. That's where the cash trickles in. But this part is sort of the platform to the other stuff. But the other stuff is not as what's the word for it? I guess sexy, because it's all behind the scenes and your name is never on it. But it's
Right on.
okay. You have that pride, and of course, Talking Metal, I guess, has led to you doing the VH1 stuff, and has led to the Talking Metal TV show on Fuse. I mean, am I wrong
Yeah.
about that? Yeah. So
Absolutely. The even working on that metal show, that was all
right,
about the cred, I guess, that I had
right.
from doing talking metal for so long. And even recently was talking to the people over at Rolling Stone magazine. I don't know if it's going to lead to anything. I'm not totally expecting it, but they were like, man, talking metal, we're fans of that. You've been doing it for so long, over 10 years now. So it definitely, these platforms help you and
Right.
myself get noticed, and
Yep.
that's a good feeling.
Yep. And listen, it got us to Heavy Montreal. We did some nice covers there this year. And by the way, according to Facebook, we're celebrating 3 years today as Facebook friends. So
Oh yeah, cool.
happy anniversary.
Cool.
Speaking of 10 years and anniversaries, but there you go. Let's get on to King Parrot and Matt Young, vocalist for the band. The new album is called Dead Set. Here is Matt Young. We are speaking with Matt Young of Australian band King Parrot, currently on tour with Cattle Decapitation, the North American Extinction Tour. Good day, Matt. Welcome to our shores.
Thank you very much, my friend. I appreciate it.
So much to talk about. So let's just start with the tour then. You've been on the road since September 15th. It's going to stretch into the middle of October. How's it going?
It's going great, man. We're having a really good time, and yeah, we started off a few weeks back. We did a couple of headline shows down in California, and then we met up with the tour package for the North American Extinction Tour, and yeah, it's been fantastic. The reception's been great. The attendance has been amazing. We had an amazing sold out show in Toronto last night. I think tonight in Ottawa was sold out as well. And yeah, I think all the bands, Dark Sermon, Black Crown Initiate, ourselves, and Cattle Decapitation, they all bring something different to the table. They're all very sort of unique bands, and I think it's made for a really great tour. So yeah, we couldn't be happier with the way it's gone so far.
Talk to me about the challenges of a band from Australia coming on a tour in North America. What did you have to do? I mean, the cost must be exorbitant.
It is. I mean, we're not new to it, that's for sure. I think this is our 6th or 7th tour in North America now in the last couple of years. So the costs are extremely high. So we have to sort of kind of budget and make sure that we do a lot of planning around that sort of thing. But for the most part, we're just doing what we love doing, and that's the most important thing. And we worry about how we're going to pay for it later. but no, it is challenging, but we seem to be surviving so far, so it's all good.
Let's talk. Of course, you're on the road here supporting the new album, Dead Set. Talk to me a little bit about
Uh-huh.
the album. What were you trying to put together when you were making the album?
I guess it had been a couple of years since we put out the first record. So with this new album, we took about a month off last year when we were up in Vermont, actually, and we sat in a barn up at our friend's property in Vermont, and we wrote the record. And I guess we just wanted to sort of make a record that was really vicious and nasty sounding, and sort of in the true sort of vein of what Team Parrot was and what we established with our first album, but also the developments that we'd made. And we've had 3 or 4 different drummers since we did the since the first record we got 4 different drummers through the band. So that was a challenging thing for us, and to write a new album with our now permanent drummer Todd Hansen has been, it was a great thing to do straight off the bat when he came into the band. He did, I think, 2 tours, one in Australia, one here in America, and then we started writing the record with him, and it really helped solidify him as a member of the band, and we all just gelled really well. And we just wanted to sort of show the growth of the band, and it still undoubtedly sounds like us, but there's certainly new elements in there. There's certainly more old school death metal sort of elements in there, as well as the sort of high pitched grind punk stuff that we've done in the past as well.
I did want to talk to you about the drummers, that situation. What was going on where they were sort of coming in and coming out? Could you just not find the guy that was laying down the proper beat, or why the flux in the drumming position?
Well, originally we had a guy called Matt Rizzo. He was the drummer in Australian grind band Blood Duster, who had been around forever, and he was our original drummer, and he kind of didn't seem that he was keen on touring and going and doing the international thing. And then we juggled 2 drummers for a little while. We had Matt Skitz, who is a bit of a legend in the Australian continent. He's played in bands like Damaged and Sadistic Execution. We had him for a little while, and another guy called Rob Brenz. He did a lot of shows with us as well back in 2013. We ended up deciding on Matt Skitz, who joined the band, and after we'd done our first US tour, he just sort of decided as well that he wasn't into the touring thing. So we were kind of getting to the end of our tether there, and we were doing our last Australian tour with Matt Skitz, and he'd let us know that he was going to be leaving at the end of that tour, and totally amicable and fine. It's just the touring thing can be quite challenging for people. Especially being from Australia, being so far away from home and all that sort of thing. But Todd Hansen, our now drummer, his band was supporting us on our Australian tour, and we sort of we asked him if what he felt about it, and he was almost ready to quit touring and playing and all that sort of thing. And then we asked him to join the band, and it's been going really well ever since. So yeah, very lucky.
Yeah, it really is, and of course it permits you to tour in North America. Phil Anselmo, formerly of Pantera, of course, Down, Superjoint, and all that stuff. Last time I interviewed him, he actually was talking about you. Oh, got some noise going on. What is the relationship with Phil? And of course, he was in your video for Like a Rat. How did you get to hook up with Phil?
Well, a couple of years ago, actually, he sent me a email just out of the blue, and said that he was a fan of the band and that he wanted to, wanted to meet up with us. And I thought it was someone playing a joke on me or something. And it turned out to be him. And yeah, we met up at Soundwave, and a few weeks later, we were actually doing a tour in the US. And we met up with him, and he invited us out to stay at his place, and that was awesome. And then he sort of expressed an interest in getting us onto Housecore Records and all that sort of thing, which we were really honored. And did a tour with Down last year here in North America, and went up the West Coast and up into Canada as well. And from there we went and stayed down at his place in Louisiana, and we recorded the new record with him as producer, and obviously made that video for Like a Rat as well. So yeah, it was a good experience.
It was a good experience. Where do we go from here after the tour ends? Do you come back, or what's next?
I think from here we're going to go home for a little while. We've got a few shows at home. We're going to make a new video, and we're really hoping to get over to Europe either at the end of this year or early next year, and try and do a similar sort of thing to what we've done here in North America. We've toured pretty relentlessly the last couple of years, and we've found that that's kind of a formula that's worked for us in Australia and here in North America, and we just love playing so much and performing live. We're going to try and get into the European market a bit as well, and hopefully get back over here as well on a bigger tour next year, and just keep trying to grow it. You know, we want to do some writing over the Australian summer, which starts, and obviously the opposite to what you guys have.
Right, in a couple of months, right?
We want to. So we're gonna try and start doing some writing, and we've already got a couple of new songs, and we want to try and get that sorted, and we really want to make a concerted effort on this new record to make it a real step up again. So that's it. That's our goal for the foreseeable future, anyway.
When you look at a band like King Parrot, you've done these tours, you've set out on the road, you've made, this is the second album plus the EP. What do you consider success? And is there a game plan where at some point you go, okay, we're not hitting that next plateau, we call it a day? Or, what are the goals that you've set for yourself at this point?
Well, I guess the goals are always sort of changing.
Right.
I mean, initially, if you had told us that what we would, if we'd have recorded our second album with Phil Anselmo and done 7 tours in North America when we initially started, we just would have said, I don't believe you. Right. That's not going to happen. But it did happen, and we did have those sort of goals, and we have always wanted to be a band that tours internationally. So I think progressively we need to build into Europe. That's probably our next step.
Right.
And try and get on maybe another higher profile tour, like a Summer Slaughter or the Mayhem Fest or something like that. Or support with a bigger band, that would be fantastic for us in growing the band here in North America. But I just, the most important thing, I guess, for us is that, to me, it is successful because we're out here, we're not starving, we're not dead, and we're doing what we love. We've got lots of friends out on the road that help us. With food or somewhere to, a roof or whatnot. So to me, it's just about sort of, I guess, survival to a certain degree. Right. and enjoying yourself each day, because we just love what we do. And, being on this tour with Cattle Decapitation has really sort of helped us see the growth of the band in the couple of years that we've been sort of touring here, and that people are really starting to we're starting to build our own fan base, and it's a really encouraging thing.
Now, Cattle was at Heavy Montreal this year. I certainly would love to see King Parrot there. Is there a point where you consider changing the style of the music and making it more sort of a mainstream metal to try to get that larger audience? Or do you sort of stay to what you do and build it through the live show and other means?
Yeah, I think that's a tough one as well. We've always sort of been a band that's played like grindcore, death metal, and had elements of punk rock. And I think having those elements there will allow us moving forward in the future to experiment a little bit and do different things. I don't think we're going to stray too far from what we do, but you know, one of our biggest influences on the band and one of the, you know, the bands that really, and with their work ethic and everything since the outset, is AC/DC. And we love AC/DC and we love what they do, and obviously they're probably the biggest band in the world now, but they just sort of started off in a similar fashion to us, obviously playing rock and roll or whatnot. We're playing a totally different thing, but they just stuck to that same formula and worked their asses off. And I also look at other bands like, you know, like a band like Clutch, for instance, who sort of started off a little bit heavier and they've kind of changed their way a little bit now, but not too much. And they've just built it on that work ethic and the live show and the consistency of the output. And I think that's probably what King Parrot's going to be going for. And yeah, I mean, yeah, we do sort of pigeonhole ourselves a little bit in terms of the grindcore and and all that sort of stuff. So who knows what's going to happen material-wise. Right. I don't think we'll stray too far from the path, but I do know that we're going to be starting to write. We're having discussions about sort of where we want to go with this next record. So yeah, we'll see how it pans out. And I think the main thing for us is that we've established a sound, and we sound like us, and we don't really sound like too many other bands. And that's something that, you know, a lot of bands never actually find. So right. We're very grateful for that as well.
Because I was just thinking, do you bring in at some point more melody? Not to say that you're not melodious now, but do you bring, you know, sort of like Metallica going from Kill 'Em All to the Black Album, they brought in more melody. Is that a path you could see the band taking, that you maybe sort of round out the edges and make it a little less rough? And I know that's a bad way to put it, but you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And I mean, it's probably, I mean, that sort of a dramatic change is probably, I mean, who knows, but who knows what can happen in the future. But, you know, we did try and add a few little sort of melodious, more melodious vocal lines. Right. On the Dead Set record, and that was sort of something that we hadn't done a lot of on the first record, which, you know, because we were just sort of finding our feet and working out what we were doing as a band. But yeah, there was a couple. We toyed with it, and you know, I listened to that new Cattle Decapitation record, and I think for me and a lot of other people that are fans of the band have stated that it's just breaking new ground, and there is that melody that's still very brutal, it's still very death metal, but there's this melody in there that you just can't deny, and it just sounds bizarre, and it's totally original, and it's just opening doors, I think, for what you can do with extreme metal now. And I think, you know, for us when we're going forward and doing this new record, we'll definitely be looking at other ways to grow and explore and build the band up. But yeah, that new Cattle Decapitation record, I can't speak highly enough of it, and seeing all that new material live on this tour has been awesome. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Now, vocally, the style of singing is tough on the throat. Is there anything you do to preserve your vocal cords? I mean, do you have any routine, or are you sort of aware that, okay, I'll do this for 5 years and then we'll have to start thinking about it? Any kind of vocal, you know?
I mean, obviously there's lots of stuff out there these days, and I have had a little bit of vocal training. There's the Melissa Cross stuff. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her, that she does the what's it called? The Zen of Screaming. So I've definitely checked all that stuff out. I just think over time and playing so many shows that you develop your own style. And the only times when I've ever really come close to losing my voice is when I've actually been sick. So it may sound a certain way or whatnot, but my voice actually went like that when I was initially when we started the band. I was trying to do this sort of hardcore punk sort of thing, and I quit smoking around the same time, and then my voice just kind of went up this extra pitch, and it just sort of stayed that way. So I was kind of like, well, I guess this is it now. This is the way it sounds, and it's kind of like I don't know. I've heard it described as like a Brian Johnson grindcore sort of thing. So I don't know. Yeah, to me that's cool. That's different. So
Yeah, it
that's
is.
cool. But I'm certainly going to try and work on it.
And it's interesting also that you noticed the change after the quitting of smoking. Because smoking, it dries out the vocal cords. It's tough to have 3 or 4 cigarettes and then go out there and try to have a throat that's for the lack of a better word, moist and ready to go, right? So, good on you for quitting, by the way.
Thank you very much. It was, I mean, I'm clean and sober as well, so, and I can probably say that actually cigarettes are one of the hardest things to give up. So, yeah, that was challenging. But I kind of knew that if I didn't stop everything else, that I wasn't going to be able to quit smoking cigarettes, and it was very important for me to want to do that because it's certainly not easy.
Yeah, absolutely not. I've never smoked, but I've known a lot of people, and they keep telling me it's a great challenge. Matt, great pleasure talking to you today, and I really hope that you'll make it back to the Heavy Montreal Festival in August, because that is the sort of premier stage for metal bands, and would love to see you on it. And hey, I'm glad you're having a great tour. You're in Montreal in the next couple of days. We'll get out there and check out the band. And thank you.
Thank you so much for your time and your support, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything I can do to help. And
thank you so much.
Yeah, and there you go. There you have it, folks. My interview with Matt Young of Australian band King Parrot. Their new album is Dead Set. And of course, at the front of the show, we had Richie Kotzen of the Winery Dogs, their new album Hot Streak. They're currently on tour, so that is definitely something worth checking out. Not coming to Montreal, which is disappointing. Hopefully, they'll come up here. Mark, just quickly, since we're talking Montreal, do you think the Winery Dogs would fit on the Heavy Montreal bill? Is it a stretch, or could they actually find a place and feel comfortable?
I think they could find a place. I mean, I guess it depends who else is on the bill. But if you have Warrant and even like Fozzy, I feel like yeah, I think absolutely. I don't know how many people they would draw in, but they would draw me in. That's for sure. I would love to see Winery Dogs on Heavy Montreal. I think they'd be a great addition.
Yeah, Heavy Montreal's done the whole punk thing for a few years, where they've brought in the punk bands with the heavy bands. I'd actually like to see them go progressive next year and maybe bring in a Dream Theater. And I don't know if you want to call the Winery Dogs progressive, but they're certainly more progressive than metal, at least in
Yeah,
my
I
opinion.
mean, yeah, their song structures aren't necessarily progressive, but their musicianship is so heavy that it appeals to the progressive crowd for sure. I mean, those guys are such monster players. So
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
yeah. And so, maybe Queensryche, Dream Theater, Winery Dogs, and I guess, who else could fit into that, I guess? Well, they could have Rush, I guess, but
Rush would be fun.
that would be a whole different festival.
Yeah, I mean, I think those would be great bands that you just mentioned to have on. Even it's like, say they couldn't get Queensryche, like even Jeff Tate, his
Yep.
just to get him up there would be excellent. And
And Jeff has a huge connection with Montreal. He lived here for a while. He wrote Operation Mindcrime while sitting in a local bar. He wrote the Operation Mindcrime album was recorded at Le Studio up in Morin Heights, Quebec, where the Police and Rush and stuff did all their famous albums. April Wine. So why not give him a stage?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I'd love to see like Anthrax. I think would be a great addition.
Right. Well, they've been here, but they've played it twice.
Have they? Okay.
Once with
Yeah.
Dan Nelson, and I'm trying to think, that they do it with John. No, they couldn't have done it with Bush if they had Nelson. So no, they did it with Dan, and then they did it with Joey.
Oh, okay.
But
Cool.
but yeah, they should return. Megadeth has a new album, but they should definitely
Yes.
return. They have played it twice before, but okay, it's been a few years. Twisted Sister should definitely return on the 40th anniversary tour. That the 40th anniversary and farewell tour all combined. That would be a good idea. But there you go. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely, Mitch. Good talking with you.
Yep. We'll do another one soon. Cheers.